Welcome to the MetsRewind Podcast. I'm your host, John Struble. Subscribe and support MetsRewind on Substack at metsrewind.substack.com.
This is the MetsRewind Podcast, making baseball history every day.
Today we welcome Jay Payton to the show. Jay, the late 90s, early 2000s was an exciting time to be a Mets fan. We're going to talk a little bit about that Mets-Braves rivalry, which is going on this weekend here in just a moment. But I wanted to ask you first, how much baseball do you watch now? Is it something that you're still interested in?
I watch a little bit. I can't say I watch a ton. I'm more of a fantasy football junkie, as I think I talked to you about before.
Yeah.
But this is the time of year when I usually pay more attention to baseball with the playoffs getting ready to start, and obviously the Mets having a really good season and their usual battle with the Braves and whatnot. So it's the time of year that I usually start paying a lot more attention for sure.
Gotcha. When you do watch games like, and I know this is going away, but those defensive shifts and some of the data and the way the game has changed, even since you left, it's moved so fast. Would that have changed your approach at the plate or how you approach the game at all if you had all the stuff that's happening right now in the game?
It's different, definitely. And I think a lot of us old school guys don't kind of care for all the analytics and the launch angles. And, you see all these strikeouts up. I was a guy, the shift would never been put on me because I spread the ball all over the field. So I don't think the way the game's played today, it wouldn't really have affected the way I played. But like I say, I'm a guy that I thought like striking out was like a sin. So the game's definitely changed in that regard to where these kids, even today, I mean, I've coached little league kids and stuff, and they think that launch angle means you swing straight up, and they wonder why they swing and miss the ball so much. So I'm not a big fan of it and whatnot, and I'm glad to see they're getting rid of the shift or whatnot. But it's the game. It evolves. You kind of have to evolve with it.
Can you, as you coach, you said little league or younger kids like that who are developing those skills and really kind of being drawn to some of those things, launch angles and exit velocity and all those things. Is that a little bit frustrating? Do you coach kids at a higher level too, where that's kind of ingrained now?
Yeah, it is. And like I say, I try to tell kids, and the launch angle thing is mainly it's about hitting home runs. Yeah. And I'm like, I try to tell kids you have to learn how to be a good hitter before you can be a good power hitter.
Correct.
If you go right into the box and try to become a good power hitter out the gate, you're pretty much done. So I try to just tell them, I'm like, learn about contact, putting the ball in play, learn to control your bat. And then as you evolve as a hitter, you can learn to maybe create a little bit more launch angle and even the exit velocity. These kids think you got to come out of your shoes and swing. And a lot of times they think muscling up and whatnot. I'm like, bat speed's created by being relaxed and kind of letting your body work. So it's just different. Like I say, the game evolves, the coaches evolve, and everybody has to kind of get on board. And you kind of got to work with what you got.
Who taught you the most about playing the game of baseball? Your mentors, those who taught you hitting? And I know it's a different game even when you were growing up, but who were the people that were real influential to you?
Well, I grew up in a small town in Ohio, so really it was just me and my pops. Okay. And it wasn't so much that he even told me how to hit. I think, and if you ask any guy in the big leagues, most of them, from the time they picked up a bat, they just kind of have a knack for being able to hit. Yeah. Obviously, you work on your craft, you work on your skill, you kind of fine tune and tweak things. But at the end of the day, I just say you're kind of born to hit, and that's just athletics in general. You can take a kid that's not super athletic and it has no eye-hand coordination. He could hit 24 hours a day, and it may not result in him being a Major League Baseball player. And then you could take another guy that just has the natural gift to hit, starts playing baseball when he's 15 and figures it out. And, next thing you know, he's playing Major League Baseball. So it's like I say, you're kind of born to hit is what I say, but you definitely got to fine tune it and work on your craft.
That's got to drive people or players nuts who really have nothing but the desire to get in the major leagues, and then the guy next to him's like, I haven't hit a baseball, I play basketball mostly. Then they get in the box and they can just spray it all over the place.
I think Dave Justice was an example of that. I don't think he played much high school baseball even, and he had a nice major league career.
Right. So Mets and Braves playing another big late season series in Atlanta, it certainly brings me back to that time when you were playing with the Mets. Huge rivalry. Two teams played some amazing games. Obviously the Piazza 9/11 home run, the Ventura walk-off single or grand slam, however you want to refer to it, and that heartbreaking loss when Kenny Rogers walked in the winning run with the bases loaded. When you look at that series now, if you watch it, how was that series different for you as a player? Would you approach it differently? Not that you approach your game differently, but would you get a little more excited or hyped up when you were playing the Braves?
Yeah, that was the rivalry. When I was playing, they had won like 8 pennants in a row or something crazy. So they were the cream. They were the Yankees of the National League, basically, when I was playing. So, and even now they've been back on a pretty good run. So I think there's a lot of similarities to when I was playing now, that they're kind of the team that has to be dethroned in the National League.
I saw, I remember watching some of those games, and every time I would go to Atlanta, whether it was at that time, it was Turner Field, and I think even some of those earlier days when the rivalry started may have been Fulton County Stadium, but whatever. But when the Mets would play in Atlanta, it seemed just like every time, Jay, it just seemed like a heartbreak. You guys would be right in the game, but it was like 7th, 8th, 9th inning. It'd be a one-run game. Mets may be up by 1, but you could kind of feel it coming as a fan. Was there any sense of that as a player too?
No, you don't really think about it as a player. Like they had a great team. They had great pitching. Andrew Jones ran everything down in center field. It was hit, and just that's just who it was. And it's even like you can look at the Yankees or look at the Red Sox. Even the Red Sox. I mean, you could be up 2 runs on them. David Ortiz would come up and hit a 3-run homer, and the game's over. Like there's just certain teams that have this knack for playing from behind. And, when I was playing, the Braves were that team, and didn't matter whether they were playing us or somebody else. That's just the team that they could come back if they were down a run or 2.
Yeah, you really got to step on their throat. When you're up, you got to really create some separation to
exactly. With that pitching they had, with that pitching staff they had, starters and bullpen, it made it hard to stretch a lead out. So they could. That was the beauty of it. They could keep it a 2-run ball game, and then swing it a little bit at the end of the game and come up with a victory. Of
that staff, Jay, Glavine, Maddox, Smoltz, and Avery, were one of those guys tougher to hit for you than another?
No, I don't think. I mean, Smoltz, obviously, especially when he stepped into the closer role, he was probably the most difficult. Yeah. Maddox and Avery, it's not like they were overpowering. I mean, they had tremendous control of the strike zone, could put a ball where they want. I think both of them probably got an extra 3 or 4 inches off the plate, when they were pitching. So it made it tough. I'm not sure what my numbers are off of them, but I think if you ask me which one I would least like to face, it definitely probably would have been Smoltz.
All right. So let's step back in your career too. You get a scholarship to Georgia Tech. You were a good student too. You get the full ride. What was your major in college?
I was a business major. I was at Georgia Tech. So you were either at Georgia Tech with a 1,500 SAT doing engineering, or you were an athlete that came in with maybe a 1,200 or 1,100 and you were playing a sport and you were a business major. That's kind of how it worked down there.
Did you get drafted before you graduated?
I was drafted after my junior year of college. Yeah, I was there. Me, Nomar Garcia-Parra was a junior.
That's right.
And then Jason Varitek was a senior. He actually came back for a senior year after getting drafted in the first round. He came back, and so we had a pretty loaded team. My last year there.
Yeah, that was the year Georgia Tech advanced to their first ever College World Series appearance in school history, and I thought that was pretty interesting. Did you go back and finish college?
I did not. That's tough. At one point, I actually applied to school when I had my, I think it was after my second Tommy John, and I thought I wasn't going to be able to play ball anymore. And that was when I was still in the minor leagues. I applied, and I think like the day before classes, I think I was like, my heart wasn't in it. I just wanted to rehab and give it my last go for baseball. And, I wasn't even sure if I'd get back and have a big league career. So, and then once I finally got back and was able to have my career, I never did finish. That's tough. I probably forgot everything I learned and then some.
You also played I noticed in researching you played in the Cape Cod Baseball League, which I think is a truly kind of unique baseball experience for someone who's trying to get to the majors or just loves playing the game. What are your memories of playing in the Cape Cod League? Because traditionally, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong here, but usually stay with a host family while you're in Cape Cod. Is that correct?
Yeah, I had a wonderful host family. I actually played there 2 years, and my first year there, I played with Orleans both years. My first year was we weren't real good, and I stunk. I went up there. I remember too because I had gotten like mono, like my before I went up there. I was actually playing, and I had lost like 15 pounds, and I probably should have just went home and worked out. So I was awful my first year up there, and then my second year I went back up. And Nomar was actually on my team that second year, and I got off to a bad start. And I was like, man, these wood bats, I just couldn't, I couldn't figure them out. And then something finally clicked for me. And like the last 2/3 of the year up there, I think I hit over 300, and we ended up winning the Cape Cod League that year. And from there, it just kind of kept going on. But it's a great league. I mean, and now kids are using wood bats when they're, playing at age 11, 12 years old. They have wood bat tournaments, and it's an adjustment. Obviously the aluminum bats aren't all juiced up like they were for about a good 11, 12 year period there, where World Series games were, the College World Series game scores were like 17-12
That's
because
right.
the balls were just flying everywhere. So they've gotten them to be a little bit better and more comparable to what wood is now.
You get drafted in 1994, Jay, by the Mets in the June draft, and you were selected in the first round. When you were getting ready for that draft, did you have a wish list or teams or a region of the country you were hoping to play, or were you just looking for, I hope I get drafted and make the major leagues at that point?
Yeah, coming from a small town in Ohio to being where I was at that point in time, playing at Georgia Tech on a scholarship and playing in the World Series, I was just happy knowing I was going to get drafted. Didn't have a care where I really went. The funny thing is, I remember being out in Omaha during the draft, and I was looking at the draft order. I was like, man, whoever gets taken, with the Mets' third pick, I'm like, all the money's gone because that's the third first-round pick they had.
Yeah, that's
so
right. Yep.
I was kind of joking that, all the signing bonus money was going to be taken up by Paul Wilson, and I think it was Terrence Long, and I ended up being the third of their first-round picks. But I was excited that I went where I did, and it was just kind of funny that's how that worked out.
I was scrolling through your player profile last night and counted up. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I counted 4 surgeries just during your minor league career. And then obviously some DL stints once you got to the majors as well. But, one injury, it happens. 2, okay, coincidence, kind of a fluke, bad luck. But when they start piling up, you had to be getting frustrated and wondering, am I ever going to get healthy enough where I can prove that I'm major league quality? Did you go through those moments or ever consider quitting when you were going through all those injuries?
I never thought about quitting, but I definitely thought that maybe my career as a major leaguer wasn't going to happen, especially after I had that first Tommy John, and I think I kind of got rushed back maybe a little bit just because it was as me being an outfielder, not a pitcher. I think that they just kind of put me on the fast path to try to get back, and it just my elbow never took and ended up tearing it up again and having to have it redone. That was really the main issue for me. But then I ended up kind of hurting my shoulder. I hurt my left shoulder. I think trying to protect my right elbow after the second Tommy John. So had to have that done. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of doubt. It wasn't about me quitting, and it was just a lot of doubt whether my body was going to allow me to keep going and keep playing. And, fortunately it worked out. And once I got to the big leagues, I think I had a stint in 2001 where I spent like 6 weeks on the DL with a torn hamstring. And outside of that, I don't think I really spent much time on the DL.
Yeah. Not like you did in the minors. Yeah.
No, the minors were, that was where I spent less time. I spent more time not playing than I did playing. And I think obviously that hurts your overall potential when you don't get to play. I mean, I lost a feel for stealing bases, reading pitchers. I think with my speed, I wasn't really a stolen base guy. And even your swing, with all the injuries I had, I think I had to adjust my swing and didn't have the same natural swing that I had before all the injuries. But like I said, I felt fortunate and blessed to even, to be able to get a 10-year career after everything I went through.
Yeah, no doubt. So a young Jay Payton at that time, you're in the minor leagues and your dream is you're right on the brink of it. How did you deal with adversity, whether, through those injuries or if you were going through a slump when you were trying to come back? What was Jay Payton like to be around during those times? How did you deal with that?
Luckily I have a great family, my mom, dad, my brother, just, a lot of support from them. But, I would definitely say there was some depression that was going on during that. I mean, you can't help it. You go from being a first round pick to, a guy that the Mets were looking at as being a middle of the order kind of hitter in their lineup and, hopefully having a great career to, time after time, wondering if you were ever even get to play the game again. So it wasn't easy, but I'm a fighter, and it's what just what I was used to. And, and with my family's support, I was able to just keep going. And fortunately, like I say, might not have been the career everybody expected, but it was for what I went through. I think it was pretty darn good.
Hey man, 10 years in the major leagues. There's something to be said for that. And you had a really good career. That was very encouraging what you said. And I just thought it had to be interesting because you come from the highest of highs. You were in that right on the brink of winning the College World Series and lost. I think it was Oklahoma.
Yep, lost to OU.
And then,
which is funny because after I retired, I ended up doing a little college baseball broadcasting. I did a year with ESPN where I was doing ACC games, and then after that, I was missing my son's stuff, so I was living in Oklahoma because that's where my son's mom was from, and I ended up doing for Fox, I ended up doing 2 years of OU's games, their home games for them. So went full circle. They took my ring from me, but I got a few paychecks from them, so it worked out.
You're listening to the Mets Rewind podcast. Subscribe and support us on Mets Rewind on Substack at metsrewind.substack.com. Our special guest today is former Mets outfielder Jay Payton. Finally, Jay, you get the call in 1998. Actually, you were up for just a minute in 97, if I recall, but you didn't get to play. But that September call-up in 98, you make your major league debut. Memories of that first game, first at-bat?
Yeah, I remember playing, I think we were in San Diego, and yep. I got going to the game late, and I believe Dan Maselli, I got my first hit off of, and then I got my second. I went 2 for 2. I got my second, went off of one of the greatest closers of all time, and Trevor Hoffman. Ooh. So I at least got off on the right foot, that's for sure.
Boy, 2 for 2 in that first game. That's awesome. Until you were traded to Colorado in 2002, you played first 5 years under manager Bobby Valentine. Here's a guy who has strong opinions, large personality. What was your relationship like with him, and what was he like to play for?
We got along great. He's just he was a little bit hard on me, but I think he's one of those. I guess they call them kind of veteran type managers. There's certain managers that love their veterans, and the young guys are going to be a little bit harder on them. And he also, he had a tough situation because there was a point where he thought, Benny was his guy. Benny had came up the year before and done great for him. And, there was a situation coming out of spring training that year where it was like, well, I'm out of options. They got to keep Jay. Benny might get cut. But it worked out where me and Benny both got to stay on the team. So it was great. He didn't really have to make that decision or be a part of it. And, things were great. And like I say, you're right. He's a very strong personality. I will say he's like one of the most just like intelligence wise people that I've been around a lot of people, and just the knowledge he has. I mean, the man speaks fluent Japanese. He's got to be one of the smartest men that I've ever been around, and knows the game of baseball as well as anybody. And it was good. We got to a World Series with him, so you can't complain about that.
Absolutely. So some other characters you played with during that time, that 5-year stint with the Mets. I want to play a little word association with you. I'll mention a name, and you tell me your kind of reflection to them or the first thing that comes to mind. This is always fun. Ricky Henderson. Right. Ricky Henderson.
Ricky? Oh man, I would say comedy. Ricky was funny, man. Like Yeah, it was towards the end of his career, obviously, and he was just having fun, holding on and playing the game. But yeah, he was just a funny cat.
Yeah, Turk Wendell.
Turk, man, the guy nobody wanted to play catch with because he couldn't play catch and throw his ball straight. So he always had a hard time finding somebody to play catch with him because everything he played, every ball he threw, whether he was trying to or not, it moved like crazy. But that's kind of what I remember with him, is him trying to get somebody to play catch with him.
Derek Bell.
Derek Bell, man, that's Operation Shutdown. I guess that's what comes to mind. That's kind of what they put on him, that and living on his boat on the water. So, but I love Derek. Derek was awesome to me. He was really good to me.
He was kind of a free spirit, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And the final one, and it's more of situational with this person, playing behind Steve Traxel.
Man. That's the true paint drying thing. Like, it's just
patience.
The guy, and I love Steve too. I still run into him every now and then, some events. But yeah, he worked slow. He had his way, but everybodydy's got their thing. And for him, if he would have tried to work fast, it probably wouldn't have worked for him. But the good thing is, you know what you're getting into when you're out there. You're like, all right, it's going to be a long one.
So last couple questions for you here, Jay. I've talked to a lot of former Mets recently about the pressure and expectation of playing in New York. And this came up again because recently the Mets had traded at the deadline for Darren Ruff, and he didn't perform well. Okay, I understand he's a little bit later in his career. He's 35, but he hit lefties really well, and that's why the Mets got him. But there was some conversation around that maybe he can't handle New York. And I kept hearing this about certain players. I would hear it about, early on it was Nolan Ryan hated New York and he didn't really take off until he got to California. And some of that had to do with on the field and coaching. Roberto Alomar, Carlos Baerga, some of these guys who were really, really stars, they come to New York and they fall short of expectation. In your experience, not with you personally, but in your experience, is that a legitimate thing that New York can really kind of get under some people's skin or really challenge them as a player and make it difficult for them to play their game?
Yeah, I definitely think so. It's a big market. You're in the spotlight. I mean, for me, it wasn't as bad because that's where I started. So That's really all I knew. But then when you go from New York and like I went to a place like Oakland where it's like, after a game, there might be a couple reporters in the locker room instead of, 30. The spotlight's not quite as big. And if you start off in a place like in Oakland or somewhere and then you go to somewhere where the spotlight's a lot bigger, the pressure's a lot bigger, and even more so today because of, the social media and, there you can turn on your computer and read about 1,000 things about that's being said about you today versus even when I played. So even more so today when you're in that type of market, I think it definitely, if you have thin skin, or you're a little bit sensitive, it's definitely not a place you're probably going to have a lot of success.
What would be your recommendation to players who play in New York and social media? Just stay off it. And
I would say, man. If you're there, if you're Aaron Judge, you can read it all you want because you're on top of the mountain. But if you're struggling a little bit or not doing what you were expected to do, you're best off to not click on anything and read anything because it'll just drag you down that rabbit hole a little bit further.
I bet. I remember one game with you particularly, Jay, and it's probably not your best memory, but it's something that had always stood out to me was the series against the Cardinals in 2000. You got hit in the head by a pitch from Dave Veras of the Cardinals, and you charged the mound. I'm sure that was adrenaline and just, you get popped like that. But my thought was, is there any way as a player that you can describe what the sensation of being hit by a ball, a sphere, traveling at like 90, 95 miles an hour, and it hits you in the head? I mean, what is that sensation? Did you have any concussion-like experience after that? Did it create bad headaches? What did it feel like? What was that? Can you walk me through?
Yeah, luckily I've been hit in the face a few times with baseballs, and luckily I've never never had any symptoms of a concussion, at least not to my knowledge. If anything, it's almost like somebody just walk up and sucker punches you, and you just basically want to get up and fight, or you stay down, depending on your personality. My personality is, if you sucker punch me, then we're getting after it. And in that situation too, where, they were getting ready to go home and we were going to the World Series, to this day, I'm still sure there was a little intent on his part. Yeah. Maybe not for hitting me in the head, but definitely for coming in and hit me. I was a young guy and, whatnot. So, that's it. But at the end of the day, like I tell everybody, I said, if I got to get hit in the head 100 times to go to the World Series, then I'll wear it.
That's right. So despite losing that Subway Series in 2000, you had a really good series. You were 7 for 21. You hit 333. And in game 2 of the 2000 series, you hit a 3-run homer off Mariano Rivera in the 9th inning to bring the Mets within a run. That was the last postseason home run Rivera gave up in his career. That had to be just special for you.
Yeah, that's for my career, that's definitely the one bright and shining thing that sticks with me. It was one of those things where I was a young guy and his bread and butter was a cutter, a high cutter at that, up and away. But, not knowing me and being able to scout me much, my strength was actually, something up and away. I liked the ball hard and up and away, and it kind of played into my strength just as much. So, it's funny because I know he only gave up the 2 postseason homers ever. The other one he gave up to Sandy Alomar, and his daughter, she's in college now, but his daughter and my son are at the same high school. So I ran into him a couple times down here in Dallas.
Yes, the home run hitters off Mariano Rivera. And that, I look back at that series. When you think of that series, the Mets lost, I think, almost every single game by 1 run. It was just skin of the teeth. And you look at the total score of that World Series at the end of the day, Jay, I think it was like 17-14 Yankees. Yep. It was really, really tight. It could have gone either way. I think the shift really came in that game 1 loss. Was that a momentum changer, do you think?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, the Todd Zill home run could have been Timo getting thrown out on the Jeter play. I mean, if we win that game, it could, the things could have unfolded completely differently. Yeah. Being up 1-0 on them. So it was a great series. We were a pitch or a hit away from being on the other end of that. I think we gave it a good run, but just sadly we fell a little short.
The other moment that sticks out in your career for me is 9/11 at Shea, and you get the big Liza Minnelli kiss. Tell me about that experience. Had you ever met her before or anything?
No, I hadn't. I think I was just in the right place at the right time. I was leading off the inning, and she got done doing her thing, and she just kind of looked over, and I wasn't too far away, and just kind of met eyes and went over and gave her a big hug, and she gave me a little kiss on the cheek. And actually, my mom sent her a picture of that for one of my birthdays, and she actually signed it and sent it back. So I got that keepsake.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Jay Payton has been our guest on the Mets Rewind podcast. Jay, it's been a pleasure catching up with you. How does life, what's your life look like now? Are you doing any work? Or are you just enjoying retirement? What's up with you?
Yeah, just kind of hanging out now. Like I said, I did the broadcasting for a few years, and then I coached travel ball for several years after that. But down here in Dallas now, I just kind of hanging out, spending time with the family, with my son. He'll be going off to college next year.
Oh, and my goodness.
Then I'll figure out what the next chapter is for me.
I know I'm getting old when Jay Payton's kids are already off in college. Jay, it's been a pleasure talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on the Mets Rewind podcast.
Yes, sir. Thank you, John. Appreciate it.
This is the Mets Rewind Podcast, making baseball history every day.